And we left off, I think, here. Jacob, can you read this one?
See here. Raising exceptions. You can raise exceptions by using the raise statement. You need to specify the type of exceptions raised.
Okay, so if for some reason you want to create an error, if a specific thing happens, which I mean, I guess for logging would be helpful, you can raise it and then specify the error. I don't usually do that, but it's an option. Go ahead, answer the next question. Okay, which errors occur during the execution of this code? Try, print, 1 divided by 0, except 0 division error, raise value error. So you're going to get your 0 division error and your value error. All right. Patricia, can you read this one?
Yes. Raising exceptions. Exceptions can be raised with arguments that give detail about them. Run the code and see how it works.
So yeah, that would be more useful than just raising the error, because if it's going to get an error, it's probably going to get an error anyway. But at least you're specifying more details about it. All right, go ahead and answer the next question. So fill in the blanks to raise a value exception if the input is negative. So if float num is less than 0, raise value error and pass in negative. Once we're done with this, I'll show you all a better way of.
Hey, Brandon, quick question on this.
Yeah.
As far as I understand, like what we're doing here, and the operator or the less than 0 obviously makes it a negative, and then raising the value error prints negative or alerts negative. But what does value error have to do with the term raising exceptions? I'm just trying to understand how these fit together.
Well, exceptions are errors, right? That's why it's like try and accept. So the accept is the error, right? So raising exceptions is just like making an error appear. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So does that answer or not really?
No, it does. I was just making sure there wasn't like, I don't know, but it does make sense.
Yeah. Okay. Brian, can you read this one?
Raising exceptions in except blocks the raise statement can be used without arguments to re-raise whatever expectations occur. For example, run the code and see how it works.
Okay. So we try and divide it. So we've got our try statement, right? And so since we did accept, it's not going to process the error. It's going to say like, okay, well, we'll do this when an error is raised. And then we're going to just they're printing an error occurred, and then just by doing raise, then it's actually doing the error that initially occurred. So that kind of defeats the purpose of doing a try except, which is to prevent the error from happening, but whatever, you can do this. All right, answer the last question. Can you use the raise statement outside the except block? Yes. All right, so now that they showed you their way, I'm gonna show you a better way for debugging and stuff. I mean, you can get errors, and that's fine for like while you're debugging regularly, and then just fix them as they go and think of different ways. But another cool little trick you can do is, I learned this from a system architect at HP who's like, he's pretty high up there in HP. And this is what he does. So I occasionally do this too. So what you can do is you have a debug level equals 0. So like 0 is you're not debugging, it's just letting it run normal, right? And then you've got your, so you set that in the beginning, and then as you're like going through your code, like you have it print out stuff. So should be doing something. So okay, so like wow, I less than 10. Yeah. Whatever. Okay, so like with your different debug levels, if you want to know like what's happening with your code, okay, so actually let's just say this is, what would this be doing? Okay, you've got some sort of list. Okay, so your, let's say your thing is to just iterate through this list, right? So all right, well, this is obviously gonna eventually catch an error, right? Because it's gonna iterate past the thing. So let's just run it like normal. Oh, and then right? So we're catching a index out of range, right? But maybe we don't know why. Normally we would just look, okay, the list is that long, but maybe it was a it was an auto building list or something. Who knows, right? Well, you can do your try statements, right? But like as you're coding, if you have, so if debug level equal greater than or equal to 1, right, then we print I, right? So we know what we're at and like where it's running. So like if you run the code normally, if debug level is at 0, it's not going to do anything, right? But then when we change it to 1, so we see what's happening. We get B, C, D, E, error, and done. Oh, wait. Greater than or oh, I didn't change that. I changed the I. My bad. Hold on. But we see like which number is happening. So like you're trying to see like basically what is happening with your code. It's okay, so it's going 0 to 5, and then okay, at that point we're getting an error, right? So okay, this probably isn't a good example because with this one you could see it just went to E, but you kind of hopefully you get where I'm going with this, where by like setting debug levels on the way, like you can have it display what your code's doing, so you see like how far it gets in things and like the different processes it's taking. And then when you want, and then once you're done debugging it or whatever, you just change it back to 0. And then with it at 0, your code is just going to run normally, right? Granted, this still gets an error because we didn't fix that. So we'd have to change it to, okay, well, you saw it only went to 5, so let's change it to 5. And there, we no longer get an error, right? Does that kind of make sense to y'all, or was this debug level confusing? And you can do different debug levels too. Like you could have debug level 1, debug level 2 prints like, you know, it prints more stuff that's happening with your code so that you can see, you know, what's happening with it without having to like follow it through mentally. You know what I mean? Yeah. So is that?
So basically, it's just a troubleshooting tool.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like laying out what your code is doing so you can see it, so that you can fix it, and then you can still leave that code in there for when you go to production and you just change the debug level, you know, back to 0. And then, but then if like while you're in production level or whatever, you start to find other errors or whatever. Instead of having to add that stuff back in there, the debug level stuff, you can just, you know, change, well, do it in a local environment instead of on your production one. You know what I mean? Because your production one's the one that's deployed to the website. So just in like your Flask virtual environment, you would just change the debug level up to like follow along to see, okay, well, why is that happening? Where is it getting the error? How far is it going? Stuff like that. You know what I mean? Anybody have any questions on that?
Yeah, so can you do the debug at any lines? For instance, you're working on line, up to 50. Can you put it somewhere in there, run the code, and then start with the next block, and then put the debug at that level? You know what I'm saying? Can you do that just do section wise, not like you have like 100,000 lines there?
I'm not sure what you, oh, you mean like, okay.
Like
So
for instance, can I write like 100 lines, or I'm up to number 100, and I
So
can
you-
put bug in there, run it, and see if within those 100 lines, if I have an error, then I can go
you're
100
talking about like, say you're in like line 2000 or something on a file, and you put debug level whatever and then say line whatever. Is that what you're saying? So you see which line the error occurred on? Of the
Right. For
code?
instance, yes. So for instance, if I only write like 100 lines, can I then at that point put a debug in, run it, and see if in the top 100, if I have errors, and then take it out once I see there's no error, go to next 100 lines and then put it in there and see if I have any from where I've started the second part. Does it make
Right.
sense?
Right. Yeah. You would have it at different spot. You wouldn't just put it in just one spot. Like you put it along the way. And generally only if you start to like honestly, I only ever put it like if I start to encounter errors and I'm not sure, like you can put like a temporary debug level. Right. Like I'm too lazy to do it every time, because generally when I can see an error, I can like visualize it through, or like see, like it tells you the line that error's on. So I just go to that and like, okay, what could be causing that issue? But yes, you're right. It wouldn't just be in like one spot. It would be like in various spots all along your code. You add the different debug level stuff.
So I can put it there myself wherever I want to, so I don't have to
Oh,
have
yeah.
specific.
Yeah. And as long as you're putting like if debug level, so I guess the same way I could do this is, greater than 0, right? And then if debug level greater than 2 or whatever, like for more intensive, like, okay, debug level, I don't know, 3 or something might be, this printing every while loop, but then debug level 2 or something might just print every time a loop is finished or something, to see like where that loop finished. And like another debug level would be like like, I don't know, like just more, basically the higher the debug level, the more stuff you're going to see on the screen versus just like where the error occurred. You know what I mean?
Okay, but then I have a second question then. Now that you say all those different levels, how do I know which level is what?
You make it up. It's all up to you. Yeah, for like what you set the priority to, like, and it might change along the way. You know what I mean? You might like start out by just having everything at debug level 1, but then you're like, I don't really need to see all that code. Like while I'm looking through it, I only need to see like X amount. So like you change them around so that they're only at debug level. Like all you change is like this number right here. Like now we're gonna make that debug level 2, so I don't see that every time. You know what I mean? No. Okay.
No, because
It's your preference. It's your preference, like as you're debugging, like how much stuff you want to see, and also like whether you really need to see that stuff. Because like let's say like okay, you keep seeing all this stuff and you're having to like scroll way down because it's printing like 10,000 lines or something, right? And you're like, okay, well it's never that one, so let's change that to a 4. So I stop seeing that for now. You know what I mean?
but seeing what? So when you have 0, how many lines do you see? If you have debug level 1, 2, 3, 4, what does it compress to? That's what I'm
Well,
trying to
like,
figure out.
yeah, so like you stop seeing like this stuff, like the results that are printing. So yeah, it's printing like the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and stuff, right?
Right, right.
Like, well, let's imagine you have that in like multiple things in your code, and so you're seeing all sorts of different, numbers and stuff for like while loops, and like okay, what you'd also probably do would be something like this. You'd do if let's just copy this, if debug level greater than oops than 0, print start while loop line 92, right? So you can see what's happening, and then this would probably be debug level. So a 1, since it starts at 0, is actually a 2. You know what I mean? So now when you run this, like it's telling you, okay, start while loop line 92, and then this is happening, it gets to 4 or whatever, and then probably even do another one that's like end while loop line 101, just so you can visually see what's happening, and printing the stuff out as you're doing it. Does that make sense?
Now that makes more sense. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Any other? Kevin, you've got your hand up. What's up?
Yeah, I was just wondering, this might clarify it a little more. If you can go back to your Visual Studio.
Uh-huh.
So like line 87, that debug lev, that's just something that a variable name that someone came up with to use for debugging, right? That's not like an internal Python,
No,
any sort of.
no. Yeah, that's just a variable name. You could just call it debug. You could call it whatever you want. It's just a
Oh.
variable name.
Okay, I think that's part of where this confusion was coming from, is typically when someone says debug or debug level, there's some sort of, like Mike said, a troubleshooter, an actual program, whereas this is just you're making a variable, giving it a value, and then throughout your code, wherever you want to test something, like where you put in line 91, your if debug level, and then it prints or self-response writes whatever you're choosing it to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
Any other questions on that? Okay. Well, moving on then. right. Mike, can you read this one?
Assertions. An assertion is a sanity is a sanity check that you can turn on or turn off when you have finished testing the program. An exception is tested, and if the result comes up false, an exception is raised. Assertions are carried out through the use of assert statement. Programmers often place assertions at the start of a function to check for valid input and after a function call to check for valid output.
Okay. So run this and basically it doesn't come back true. It's coming back false. So it raises an assertion error. Go ahead and answer the next question. What is the highest number printed by this code? Print 0, assert H not equal to W. Okay, well, H and W are not the same. So it's going to print 1 and then assert false. Well, false is obviously false, so it's going to stop right there. So all we ever printed was 1. Kevin, can you read this one?
Assertions. The assert can take a second argument that is passed to the assertion error raised if the assertion fails. Assertion error exceptions can be caught and handled like any other exception using the try except statement, but if not handled, this type of exception will terminate the program.
So we get, false because the temp is not greater than or equal to 0. So it raises the assertion error, and then we want it to print this text. So it's just saying what, basically what to print if that turns out false. Any questions on that? Okay. Go ahead, answer the next one. Fill in the blanks to define a function that takes one argument, assert the argument to be positive. So create a function if x is greater than 0, then we get an error. And yeah. David, can you read this one?
Opening files. You can use Python to read and write the contents of files. Text files are the easiest to manipulate. Before a file can be edited, it must be opened using the open function. The argument of the open function is the path to the file. If the file is in a current working directory, the program you can specify only its name.
So if it's in a different folder, you need to do the path to the folder is what it's saying. But you guys have done this. Well, I don't have it on. Hold on. Can somebody do screen share real quick? Any volunteers?
I'll do it.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
All right.
Okay,
I'm
go
pretty
to
lost here, so yeah, I'll do it. Definitely do it.
all right, go to your Visual Studio.
A Visual Studio.
and go to your main.py.
All right. I was playing with it, so my main.py is all different. I got two of them. See, I got this one
Yeah.
and I got this one now, so they're all different. This one has more lines though.
Okay, we'll go to the one you were just at because I saw what I was looking for there. Okay, so
Okay.
see here on line, you guys have used it without knowing. See on line 25 how we do F equals open, and then we just go to the navigate the folder because it's in static folder, and then opening the index.html. That's why when we go to test, which the class test, it's opening your index.html file, because what we're doing is we're opening it, and so they'll probably get into this, but so like the R right there is read, and if you put WR, that's write and read, just depending on what you want to be able to do with the file, right? And then the line 26, we read it and save it into a variable, and then 27, print it. So that's just an example that y'all have already done without knowing it, or well, you've been working with it without knowing it, of the read. So, all right, thank you for doing screen share. I appreciate it.
All right.
There we go. Okay, so go ahead and answer the next question. Okay, which function is used to access files? Open. All right. Roger, can you read this one?
Opening files. You can specify the mode used to open a file by applying a second argument to the open function. Sending R means open in read mode, which is the default. Sending W means write mode, or rewriting the content of a file. Sending A means append mode, for adding new content to the end of the file. Adding B to a mode opens it to in a binary mode, which is used for non-text files such as image and sound files. You can use the plus sign with each of the modes above to give them extra access to files. For example, R plus opens the file for both reading and writing.
All right, go ahead, answer the question. Okay, drag and drop the options below to open a file called test.bin in binary read mode. So test.bin, R and B.
Hey, Brendan, how do you know it was R&B?
Because it's read and binary, and R is for read and B is for binary.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
Now, this would just be for my amusement. Can we see it in binary? Can you show us in there?
No. Because the only time you're ever really going to do that is like when you're going to then compile it to, like if you're reading the binary, like say it's an image file, right? You're going to read it and then compile it to a what's it called? To be a picture to use or whatever, right? You don't usually, like, you're not just gonna see like the ones and zeros and stuff. I don't know if that's very helpful. But yeah. So like when you read it, it's because you're gonna use it or whatever. So yeah. Oh, how do you close a? Did they even cover this? Did we read this? No, we didn't read this. I think that's right. Peter, can you read this one?
One. Oh, this one.
Uh-huh.
Opening files. Once a file has been opened and used, you should close it. This is done with a close method of the file object. We will read, write content to files in the upcoming lessons.
Okay. Go ahead, answer the next question. Okay. How would you close a file stored in variable text file dot close? Mark, can you go ahead and read this one?
Reading files. The content of a file that has been opened in the text mode can be read using the read method. This will print all of the content of the file's file name.txt.
Okay, go ahead, answer the next one. Rearrange the code to open a file, read its contents, print them, and then close the file. So first we open the file, read the file, print the file, close the file. All right. Ayani, can you read this one?
Reading files. To read only a certain amount of file, you can provide a number as an argument to the read function. This determines the number of bytes that should be read. You can make more calls to read on the same file object to read more of the file byte by byte. With no argument, read returns the rest of the file. Just like passing no arguments, negative values will return the entire contents.
Okay. Go ahead, answer the question. How many characters would be in each line printed by this code if one character is 1 byte? So open the file for I in range 21, print read 4. Well, if one character is 1 byte and we're reading 4, then it's going to be 4. That's everybody. Oh, no. Sandra, can you read this one?
After all contents in a file have been read, any attempts to read further from the file will return an empty string because you are trying to read from the end of the file. Just like passing no arguments, negative value will return the entire content.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay. Answer the question. Now this would be different if you saved it into a variable, because if you saved it into a variable, you can reuse that variable because you have that data stored in that variable. But calling file.read again is going to get you nothing. Fill in the blanks to open a file, read its contents, and print its length. File, open, file name, file.read. We want the length, so len, and then file.close.
Brandon, overall, this function or functionality of the code, reading files, it's giving us the ability to have it literally open a file from our local drive, or I guess potentially a variable if we have an input section, and then process data in some manner that we code. But basically this function of reading and open files and file reading is just the ability to interpret a document.
Yes. And we'll be using that a lot more in C#, more than we do in with Python, because with Python we're using it for web-based stuff, right? So you're more likely to save your data to the database as opposed to storing it locally, because I mean, other than storing cookies and sessions and stuff, I mean, that's all you're really going to be storing locally. You're not going to be writing stuff to the actual your server. You just wouldn't. You'd save it to the database. But when we get to C#, you can save file. You can write and read files on people's phones for to save it locally, and I do that a lot. And I'll show y'all how to do that, and to then reference back, so that instead of stuff that needs to be saved to the database, if it's something you just want to save locally and not, waste saving it to the database and then them having to be online to connect to it in the database or whatever, then you can do more stuff offline and stuff, if that makes sense. So
yeah, it does. I just want to make sure I was understanding I mean, I start going through the motions when we do it, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding the fundamental, what it does really.
yeah, it just and I'm sure, I think the next one, I think I saw it was writing files, but yeah, and same thing for like writing files. And if you're creating, if you're using Python just to build programs on a computer, not full stack web development, right, where you're building it for the internet, then yes, you're more likely to use the read write function, because that's how then you would save things locally, especially if it's like not something that interacts with a database and it's something that interacts with just your computer, right? Like you would save your, like, let's say you're building a game, you would save like, what level you're on or whatever, and what achievements you have and stuff locally, right? But with web-based development, it's you're more likely to just use a database or sessions. So
okay, cool.
Yep. Do we read this one? No, I don't think we did. Okay, let's see. Everybody. Yep. Okay, Jacob, can you read this one?
Reading files. To retrieve each line in a file, you can use the read lines method to return a list in which each element is a line in the file. For example, you can also use a for loop to iterate through the lines in the file. Result. In the output, the lines are separated by blank lines, as the print function automatically adds a new line at the end of its output.
Okay, any questions on that? No. Okay, go ahead and start on this and raise your hand once you're done. All right, a lot of you are done. So let's see. Patricia, can you do share screen and share your answer?
Here, sorry. Um, do you see everything?
I don't see anything.
Okay, one moment. That's weird. Just now. Hell, where am I?
Yes, you're good.
Yeah, it's weird. It won't let me go. Okay, here.
There you go.
So you need to put output results. So you put results equal, and then the file is up there. It's the variable. So you put file dot read lines, and then you print the results, which is here. It says take the number n, and you input that, and then it does that.
Perfect. Is anybody struggling with this one? Need any help? Nope. All right. Okay, reading files. If the file test.txt has 7 lines of content, what will the following expression return? Well, the length of test.txt read lines is going to be 7. And writing files. Brian, can you read this one?
Writing files. To write 2 files, you can use the write method, which writes a string to the file. For example, the W mode will create a file if it does not already exist.
All right, so run this one, and all it's really, so we open it, right? We're doing it in write mode. So even if this doesn't exist, it's going to create that new file .text, right? Write this to it, and then we want to read it, just like we were doing before, read, and print what we read. So yeah, any questions on that? Okay. Which line of code writes hello world to a file, file.write hello world? Mike, can you read this one?
Writing files. When a file is opened in write mode, the file's existing content is deleted. As you can see, the content of the file has been overwritten.
Okay. So open it with write, create it, write something, and then we open it to read it, reading new contents, file.read, and it's reading some new text and then printing finished. All right, go ahead, answer the next one. What happens if you open a file in write mode and then immediately close it? The file contents are deleted. Kevin, can you read this one?
The write method returns the number of bytes written to a file if successful. To write something other than a string, it needs to be converted to a string first.
All right. So hold on. Okay, so we've got our message, hello world, and then we are opening it in write mode, file.write, and we're passing in message, and then printing amount written. Well, it's not. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's 12, yeah.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, it's just telling you how long it is. So, all right, go ahead and do this one and raise your hand when you're done.
So hello world is 12 letters long. That's what it's saying.
Yeah,
That's why 12
Well,
came out.
yeah, with the exclamation point.
And the
Oh.
space in there, I think it goes all the way across, right? Does it include the space? Anything in the quotes?
The space too. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. A lot of you are done now. So David, can you go ahead and share screen and show your answer?
Yeah, sure. We had to create a list with the names John, Oscar, and Jacob. Had to input I had to open the list names, text, had to put, well, they put in there for us the right plus so you could add. We had to input the 4i in the names. We had to file dot write and add the slash n,
New line, good.
and then we also had to add the print file dot read for the program to work.
Good stuff. Does anybody have any questions on this or still struggling with it? Oh, all right. And moving on. So if a file write operation is successful, which one of these statements will be true? File.write message equals len message. All right. That is a good place to stop for today. So I'm going to log off. I'll be right back.